I'm Louise. I'm an alcoholic. Ever since I was a little kid, if somebody told me no, I went, why? And if you didn't tell me all the reasons why I couldn't do something, it was fuck you. I mean, I didn't use that word because I didn't know it, but I was like, even as a toddler, I can remember just stomping off when teachers would tell me to go, do something. I was like, why? Consequently, I was always in trouble. Not bad trouble, just, rambunctious trouble, because I was loud and I liked to talk and I liked to boss people around. When I was in second grade, I made all the kids in the neighborhood be in The Sound of Music. And we put the record on, and my dad at that time was the music minister at UP Methodist over on Preston Road there. So we had the whole stage, we had the run of the church, we're in the stage, and I played all the important parts. I would twirl around when I was Maria, and I would walk like this when I was the captain, and everybody else just sort of stood behind me and sang along with anything that needed a chorus. So we didn't make any money on that deal. We thought that selling tickets for a nickel was going to really do it, but nobody bought any tickets. But we got a lot of people to come because we all had brothers and sisters and parents, and they sat through the whole record. And at my high school reunions, I was like, dude, were you in there? And they're like, oh yeah, I was in the Sound of Music with you. Because sometimes it feels like, oh, some of the things I've done in my life, that couldn't possibly have happened. My parents were, in addition to my dad having become a minister, before that they were opera singers in Europe where my sister and I were born. And then they decided to move back to Texas from Germany because my dad got the calling. That was his story for about 30 years. And then I finally found out. He was like, oh no, I just needed to make a better living for my family. And I looked at him, I went, you moved back to Dallas in 1962, and preaching is what you thought was going to pay the bills. So whatever. Then in 1969, they decided to start an opera school in Germany for people like them that had gone over and didn't know what the hell they were doing. And, so they got together with a bunch of their friends and they started this music school that's still in existence in Austria. And it was to train young singers on the how to get a job being an opera singer, which, there are only 10 people that actually get paid to do that in the world. And at that time, in Europe, you could get a full-time paying job in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. So it made some sense to teach people how to go back and get those jobs and teach them right off the bat, like, not Pavarotti, not even his best friend, but boy, can you play some funny tenor parts and make a living doing this. Some of them went on to have huge careers and others, didn't. As one person told me, I learned in that summer that my little world in Lubbock, Texas was nothing compared to Europe, that I did not have the chops in spite of what I had been told by my teachers and my parents and my cousins that said I was just wonderful. It was always a learning experience. The problem was I wasn't an opera singer, so therefore I was less than, and nothing I could do was ever really going to be anywhere good enough for anybody because she can't sing. I couldn't sing opera. I could sing pop music all day long, but that didn't matter because if you weren't an opera singer or a classical musician, you were just whatever. You just couldn't be very much. You were just the kid. And then when I was 12, we moved back to Dallas after doing time in Waco. And boy, I hit 7th grade with boobs and attitude, and I was glad to see my old friends, and everything was kind of going great, except that when I was 12, I looked like I could easily pass for 16, and the boys really liked the boobs, and the girls were like, and I also was beginning to realize that I wasn't real sure what sex was, but I knew I wanted it, and I wanted to have a lot of it with a lot of different people. That is not what 12-year-old girls in Dallas, Texas, or especially in Highland Park, are supposed to do in 1970. So I was already... And then I was raped at a party. And of course, I became the slut, and the usual, you can't rape the willing, because if you're not, if you like to have sex, you're a problem. There's no room for you in the world. So we would go to Europe in the summers, and I would have a blast because they had a whole different attitude towards sex than people had in the States. And that's, I think that's still true. Over the years, in the summers, I mean, if you've ever known any people in the opera business, there's a huge number of gay people, men and women. And I had a lot of fun, and I did a lot of exploring, let's say, in the summers, because I was free to do whatever I wanted to. And so I did. And when I was 12, I started drinking heavily because I wanted to do so much, and I had to calm down just to, like, go out. You know, I had to calm down enough to be acceptable for people to not be like, just go over there, you're too crazy. And then my father's behavior, undelicately, I'll just say he couldn't keep his dick in his pants. And I became not a confidant, but I would see him with other women, or I would see him roaming the halls of the dormitory at 3 in the morning after I'd been out partying all night. And I was supposed to just accept that. And I thought I was going to be real cool, you know, and like, yeah, my dad, you know, and I thought I figured my mom knew about it because, you know, we're in Europe, and a lot of the dads had mistresses, and the moms didn't seem to be too worried about it. It wasn't until my mom was on her deathbed that I got her to swear to me that she had no idea what was going on. And everybody else knew. Her best friends, her brothers, everybody knew. It was the most open secret in the world, and I was supposed to keep it. And that's not a good place to put a kid. And so I kept drinking and drinking, and then there was, of course, cocaine and Quaaludes because it was the 70s. And then there were the fabulous bars like the Old Plantation and the Bayou Landing, and boy, did I love to hang around with the boys and go disco dancing and drop them off at the baths after everything closed up, and then I'd go home, or, you know, who knows. Anyway, it was, you know, the disco era was pretty wild. It was before AIDS, and people were just carrying on like there was no tomorrow, because there was no tomorrow, you know? And at one point I got sick of it, and I left a note, got home from the clubs, and I left a note on the refrigerator door. It said, Mom and Dad, I think I'm an alcoholic. I was 17. And I got up the next morning, and I was like, oh, fuck, I left that note on the refrigerator. And if even as much trouble as I was, I still assumed that my parents thought that they should take care of me. And when I came down, my dad goes, oh yeah, we saw your note. Well, I guess you better quit drinking, blah, 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 and went off. That was not what I was hoping for. And because there was no, you know, today it would be like, if you left that note on the refrigerator, there'd be 1,000 places for your parents to call or for you to call. I mean, I called the Preston group, and I was told in no uncertain terms that I was too young to be an alcoholic. And the woman was so rude to me, I was like, okay, fuck it, I'll just drink. So I did. And I drank a lot. And then I moved to Buffalo. Oh, God, that was a disaster for a year and a half to go to college with friends. At that time, Buffalo State University there had the best contemporary music program in the country. So I had a lot of friends that were in the music department. The theater department, which is what I was going to school for, were not so great. But I had friends there, so I figured I'll go there. And it was the first time I realized that other people were working really hard at what they wanted to do, and I didn't know how to do that. I'd skated by, I always got pretty good grades, I never flunked. I was like, yeah, test out, you know. But then I saw these people working really hard, and I went, oh, I don't want to do that, or I don't know how to do that, or, you know, what if I fail? If I fail after I've worked hard, that's terrible. That can't happen. If I fail because I didn't try very hard, well then, you know, oh, la-di-da. Oh, I tried that, ha ha. But if I had ever tried anything and I didn't succeed, I didn't know what would happen because I never tried anything. I never worked in anything. So about 4,000 inches of snow later, I left Buffalo and moved to New York City with $150 and a trunk full of dead ant clothes, is what we called them back then. They're now called vintage. But we just, it was, you know, the dead ant clothes. I mean, luckily I had grandmothers and aunts that had fantastic wardrobes, so I looked fabulous, but I was a little bit drunk. And I moved in. I know this is going to sound crazier than parents having a opera school. I moved into the apartment that was the headquarters for the Rocky Horror Picture Show fan club, because it was right around the corner from the 8th Street Playhouse, where it had moved from the Waverly over to the 8th Street by 79. And boy, I met people like I had never met before. I had never met people that grew up on welfare. I'd never met people that had never gone to a dentist. I'd never met people whose parents sold them. I had never met all kinds of people. And that group, man, they were some, that movie changed their lives. That was their family. And I don't mean to cry about it, but it was like, you know, people make fun of the movie or da-da, but watching these kids, I realized how lucky I was that at least I had parents that didn't sell me into, you know, whatever, and, you know, we always had food on the table somehow or another. But it was their life. It was really the first time in their lives that they had had any kind of family, and they protected each other. And I was kind of semi-welcome, but the ringleader girl, she was not having it with me because, well, I was blonde and she wasn't. Let's just leave it at that. And, but it was a blast because we got to do all kinds of things. And I didn't drink that. I mean, I drank a lot more than everybody else because Texans drink more than everybody. I mean, that is just a law. You go anywhere, and if you hear a loud group of drinking people, you can go, Texans, maybe Louisiana, probably Texans. So I didn't have any friends that drank as much as I did. And after about 6 months, I realized that I was completely falling apart. And I checked into Mount Sinai. They didn't have an alcohol ward. They didn't have anything available in the, where you go to dry out, whatever you want to call that back then. But they had room in the psych ward. And again, boy, I'd never met people that were, this is when they just filled you up full of Thorazine and Haldol. And seeing an 8-year-old girl that was being pumped full of Thorazine every day. Of course, I started a mutiny immediately, but I spent 2 weeks there, and I felt a lot better about myself because at least I didn't have a brain disease or I wasn't schizophrenic. I wasn't, I wasn't mentally ill in that way. Crazy, yeah, but mentally ill that needed to be medicated in order to not kill people or themselves or, whatever. I was way luckier than them. And about a month after I came out of that, we were having a little party, and the girl that didn't like me thought it would be funny to put rum in my drink. And I didn't taste it at first because it was pina colada. And she goes, oh, it's a virgin pina colada. So there's all like crap in it, and it's just sweet. And then suddenly I went, there's rum in this. She goes, hey, you can have it. And instead of going, fuck you, I'm not going to drink this, I went, but okay. And I just continued to drink for several years. And then I found some friends that I didn't ever have anybody to go drinking with, but we were out at the clubs all the time, and I knew all the bartenders, and we were on the list for everything. So you'd walk up and you'd get your drink tickets because we were fabulous, and we didn't have any money. So in order for us to be fabulous in the clubs, they had to let us in free, and they had to give us free drink tickets. And so I would get all my friends' tickets because they only wanted like 1, and I wanted like 10. And most of the time I would just sort of get home somehow or another, and then sometimes I didn't get home okay, and some pretty shitty things happened, but it didn't occur to me that I could have avoided the shitty things happening had I not been drunk, totally drunk, and then adding cocaine into the mix so that you're drunk and high and drunk, but you don't know what's going on either end. And then I guess I was about 23 or 24, and I decided I better stop drinking. And so I did for a couple of years, and my friends were like, oh, that's great, but nobody talked about AA. I mean, we knew it existed, but there was nobody ever said, you should go to AA meeting, and that was just not part of the discussion in the early 80s. And I was living in Greenwich Village, which, if you do the math, that was the beginning of the AIDS crisis, and my friends started dying in 1981 was the first one. So for 7 years, it seems like, all we did was take care of people who were dying. And we were young kids. We were in our early 20s. We didn't know what was going on. And there was no help. There were only 2 funeral homes that would take an AIDS patient, or you had to lie. I had to call a friend's family, and they didn't care after he'd passed away. It was traumatic. And, you know, but because you're in it, you don't think, you just think, oh, well, la-di-da. And then years later, it's kind of like, man, that was horrible. And so I would drink. Intermittently, I would drink for a year or two and then stop drinking, then not drinking, then stop drinking. And it was always the same story, because I would start drinking and it would be okay, and then I'd just pull a few benders and I would be like running into friends and they'd be like, yeah, what are you doing? And it'd be like, oh, fuck, what did I do? What did I do? I don't know if any of y'all have ever blacked out and done something rude, but I was the champion of that. And then I got a job running a little restaurant down the East Village, and I loved that job, and I didn't drink for like 3 years, and had a great time. We had an amazing clientele of, you know, it was one of the first uptown, downtown kind of places, one of the first restaurants in the East Village that served pretty upscale food, and so it was a really great little thing. And then I, on one hand, made the biggest mistake in my life, and on the other hand, I have my son, but I met who would become my future husband, and I didn't drink at all. And then sometimes we'd be somewhere and I'd have drinks or something, and then we went on a weekend party at somebody's house, and I got completely drunk, and how he didn't walk out right then, I don't know. I guess he's just the idiot I now know he is. But anyway, and we randomly decided to move to Dallas. We were out at Coney Island. No, not on Coney Island. We were at Jones Beach with some friends, and they had told us that they had just decided to move to Louisiana. And we went, oh, that's cool. So we're walking down the beach, and I said, you know, Charlie, it's too bad you won't consider moving to Dallas, because my mom travels 8 months out of the year. We can at least get out of New York or work our way to California or something. He goes, Mom, moved to Dallas. And within a week, I had a job with a company here. And we decided to move down here. And I would say within a year, I was drinking like a high schooler. I was back in Texas, and it's happy hour, and it's margaritas, and it's, you know, it was a whole different, you know, I always said when I was a kid, there wasn't anything for us to do but drive around, get high, drunk, and have sex. I mean, there just was nothing to do. And Dallas in 1992 was not the city that it is now. And I had... I'm a little stubborn. I had realized that the guy I married didn't really have much, what do you call it? When you want something and you go after it. He didn't have any of that. That's the word. He didn't have any of that. He somehow thought that I was just going to run the show and pull in the dough, and he could just be sort of the nice guy that, you know, cooked, and, you know, everybody loved it. Oh, people just loved him. He was so nice, and so he had so many fans. And anyway, we ended up having a kid, and in the delivery room, I'd asked him one thing. I said, you know, we were going to these birthing classes. He thought it was ridiculous. He would never help me with any of the breathing exercises or anything like that. He just thought it was dumb. And we left the class, and they had given us this little goofy story that the dad is supposed to tell, the partner is supposed to tell in the delivery room to calm the mom down. And I said, I ask you, I beg you, please. And we were doing that U-turn right at Royal and Central up there. And in the U-turn, I said, please do this for me, memorize this, and have it ready. He said, no, I'm going to write my own story. And I went, another moment of just shutting down and going, fuck. Fuck. If I let him know how mad I am, I didn't know what would happen, but I just shut down. I was so furious and so hurt. And then, of course, in the delivery room, he hadn't written a story, and he didn't know what the fuck was going on. He hadn't paid any attention. And luckily, my mom was there. And things had all gone haywire. And they finally had given me an epidural and induced labor. And then the doctor, and then the heart rate monitor goes, nee, and they went, oh, nope, let's go. We're going to have a cesarean right now. So, and it's not like they go, we're going to have a cesarean, hang out, have some lunch. They just like, bam, they start putting shit in you, and they take you to the operating room. And the next thing I know, they don't put you under, but I could see in the light above them pulling my son out of my stomach. It was in the reflection. And my doctor, who happened to have gone to high school with my ex-husband, says, oh, you want to see your wife's ovaries? And it's like, it was just totally insane. It was just like, and then you know, they said, if you want to keep your kid, you know, because you've had the cesarean, we have to put your son in the nursery. I said, no, I don't want him in the nursery. And they said, well, you have to have somebody with you 24/7 because you can't move. And I went, okay. So my mom and Charlie, my ex-husband, they would rotate. You know, I was only in the hospital 3 days. But I woke up one night, and my mom's asleep, and Augustus, my son, starts crying. And, I mean, it's hard to move after you've been cut open like that. And I didn't want to yell too loud because I knew they'd take him away if they found out that my mom had slept through him crying. So somehow I managed, without hurting myself or my son, I managed to get him into bed with me. And my mom woke up in the morning, she goes, oh, how'd you do that? Not like, oh my God. It just kind of like, oh, well, la-di-da. You know, oh, you managed, I guess we'll go home now, which is, you know, her answer to everything. Oh, we'll go shopping and go home. And the stupid thing, I look back now and I'm like, why the hell did I stay with that guy? What was wrong with me? And it was like that whole thing of like, you know, I was stubborn. I don't want to admit I'd made a mistake. And after my son was born, I started drinking a lot. We had our next door neighbors loved to drink. And so, you know, we didn't have to drive anywhere. And we could just stay home and party with the neighbors. And we had lots of fun. And then the fighting with my husband started. And it was never physical, but it was just his lack of, he was one of those people that would lie by omission. Like you would ask him a question and he'd just look at you, which now I understand is passive aggressive, but I didn't know that word back then. And I just kept drinking more and more to stop the rage. And then my mother randomly got sick and died within 6 weeks of her diagnosis. And it was, of course, a whole drama. I mean, if you put it in a movie, people would be like, yeah, whatever. But we got a call that said, oh, your mom's going in for colon cancer surgery this morning. And then we got another call, they don't think she's going to live much longer. So my brother and sister and I got on flights to Austria and got over there. And of course, it was 2003 when it's the heat wave to end all heat waves. 30,000 people died that summer. And we're sitting in an air-conditioned hospital ICU in Austria. And then they said we can't do anything else. So we got her on a mid-flight and got her back to Dallas. And she calls us all into her room and says, 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning, couldn't wait till like noon or something. 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning, she gathers us all, and she says to the doctor, say, we can't do anything for you. Your liver's like that big, your colon's, it's gone, you know, there's nothing we can do. And she goes, okay, I'd like to die then. And we looked at her, we're like, we were 5 minutes from Switzerland. We could have taken care of this in Europe. You were totally coherent, you know the laws. I mean, that's how our family works. It's like, if you want to die, then you just, let's do it the best way possible. And they go, well, we can't do that. And we're like, all right, well, we can't go back to Europe. So we brought her home and had her home for 6 weeks before she passed on. And that was when I would really get down. I was like, Mom, did you really not know what my dad was doing all those years? Did you not see anything? Nope, not until I found the letters, which was, 10 years after everything. Anyway, after she died, I inherited a little money, not like, in Highland Park, you got to inherit a lot of money before anybody even notices. I mean, this is just like down payment on a house, put some money away from a kid, be able to, take a nicer vacation or a vacation. And a year after she died, Charlie walks in and goes, oh, yeah, well, I got laid off. And I'm like, oh, crap. So he gets laid off, but we had 18 months of insurance. He got 6 months of pay, and I was making some money writing for the Dallas Morning News about booze and wine. And, it was, I was like, it's fourth quarter, nobody's hiring, let's just kick back and relax. And he came in one day and goes, hey, you want to open a bar? And I was like, no, are you crazy? And he said, well, that place with the windmill's empty. And I went, oh, really? That's different. And it was the old Dutch kitchen over on Maple Avenue, big neon windmill on top. So we went over, looked at it, and was like, this will make a great craft cocktail bar, because that was just starting on the East and West Coast and everywhere, big time, and not happening in Dallas at all. So we said, well, we'll make a laid-back craft cocktail bar, because everywhere that was doing that was doing, like, $15 cocktails just right off the bat. And we're like, no, there's got to be a way, something in between there, sort of a, where can you do karaoke and sip on a sidecar, because everything was shot, beer, shot. And so we opened that bar, and it turned out, it was an adventure. But it also let me drink all the time. And after a few years, I went to the gynecologist and found out that I had breast cancer. And so in 6 months, I got a divorce, I had a hysterectomy, a lumpectomy, chemo, and radiation, and started an affair with a guy in New York. So I didn't do much that summer. But I was finally able to come back to work. And my ex goes, well, I'm glad you're back from vacation. And I was like, all right, this is why we are divorced, and we have to run this business together. There wasn't any money to buy each other out, or people are like, well, why don't you buy each other out? I'm like, with what? Monopoly money? So we just didn't see each other, and but boy, I started drinking, and I fell in with the fast crowd and the cool kids, and the cool kids were doing cocaine, and I hadn't done any cocaine since 1987, and I was like, I'll just do a bump. 3 years later, I was finally like, nope, this is the last time I'm flushing it, and I'm really not doing it ever again. And that I never touched again, but the drinking was out of control, and by then I'd started a relationship with a woman who could outdrink me, which was unusual because I've had a lot of men tell me, I've never seen a woman drink like you, and I'm like, I'm good. I drink brown liquor, I drink a lot of it. I had a bartender say, I've never seen anybody count money after that much booze. And I'm like, I can always count money. So very proud of being a good female drunk. And that relationship was so insane. It was violent. It was, but it's like, how can you be abused if you're both about the same size and the same strength and you're not, it's not like a man beating up a woman. It's two women that are about the same size. And you're defending yourself, and I look back and I go, that's crazy. I should have, why did I stay? I always wonder why I stayed, but the drinking helped it because, if you drink, then you can work everything out. Not at all. And finally, I realized, I said to her, I said, look, I took it, in the very beginning, I had said to her one day, I said, when was the last time you went a day without a drink? And she looked at me, she goes, oh, not since high school. I said, seriously, you haven't gone a day with it? She goes, no, I drink, that's what I do. And I went, all right, we're gonna go over to Preston Group. So I'd been there before, the year before for 6 months, and I said, let's just give it 40 days. And in those 40 days, we had a great time. And then something happened that triggered her, and then we just both started drinking and snorting cocaine again, and it just went on from there. We finally broke up, and I moved into a place by myself, thank God. I'm just not made to live with people, I don't think. And I could sit at home and get drunk because then, I didn't talk to anybody. I would occasionally put something on Facebook that would cause a little trouble, or text somebody that would cause a little trouble, but mostly I just sat in my house and got drunk. And then I got a job. A lot of y'all know Monica, the most famous transgender person in Dallas, and she'd opened a new restaurant, and I was like, I got to get some kind of job. So I went down, I was waiting tables for her, which, that was insane asylum too. But, I looked at her and I went, wow, I am not the worst boss in the world. Contrary to popular belief, she's meaner than I am when she's drunk. And so that was a good plus, but it didn't occur to me that I should probably quit drinking completely at that point. And then she fired me, well, she's crazy, but she fired me because she claimed that I wouldn't wait on black people. And I was like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard, but you just go do you. And then we had a big to-do with the TWC, and they're like, lady, that doesn't make any sense. So she hates my guts because I was the only person, I think, who ever got unemployment offer. But such is life. So mostly I just sat home and got drunk, and then I decided I better quit drinking, quit. And so I quit for about 6 months, and then I was bored with that. And so back and forth. And then COVID hit. So there's nothing to do except sit home and drink. And had a liquor store across the street, so that was open until 9. There was a 7-Eleven and a CVS. So, there was no problem getting booze. I could just walk over. I didn't have to worry about anything like that. And I got I got drunk one day and I said something really rude to my son, and it almost destroyed our relationship. And that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough to make me completely quit drinking. But he never knew that I had anything to drink, because he said, I don't want to ever see you when you're drinking, and I don't want to ever be with you when you're at a liquor store. Don't contact me if you've had anything to drink. So I was like, all right, fine. I'll just get drunk and then I'll be sober when you're around. And that worked until the week of the insurrection. And that, all the Trump shit drove me crazy, but that sent me over the edge. And I went over to the liquor store and got some bourbon and the fixings to make excellent Manhattans, and proceeded to drink Manhattans nonstop for about a week, to the point where I was getting up in the middle of the night to have something to drink so that I could go back to sleep, so I wouldn't be so hungover and so tired. I'd be hungover but not tired, and that way I could sort of do something during the day, like watch TV, and wait around till 4 or 5 to start drinking again. And then I just didn't stop drinking. And then I woke up one day and I was like, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna literally die of alcohol poisoning, because I had gotten so sick so fast. As you get older, apparently your liver doesn't work as well as it does when you're a kid. I was getting hangover. I'd have a glass of wine and be hungover the next day. But that wouldn't stop me, because it was just, a little hangover. It wasn't one of those hangovers where you have to lie on the floor and cover yourself in ice and, pray that the world ends. It's just regular little hangover, annoying hangover, like the flu or something. But I woke up one day and I went, you know what, this is it. I am actually literally going to drink myself to death if I don't stop right now. And so I did. And that was on January 23rd, 2021, 1-2-3-2-1. So it's still COVID, everything's still locked down. And I walked around the neighborhood all the time. And then I saw the Lambda signs. Now, Lambda used to be on Butler Street, which was 1 block away from the bar I owned. So I was very aware of what Lambda was. So I saw these signs out front, and I went, oh, fuck, I don't want to go there. And I kept walking by them, and finally there was, oh, come, we're back in person, come on, come on, come on. And I went, all right. So in April, it was 105 days from whatever January 23rd was. 105 days later, I finally dragged myself over here. And it became apparent that, number one, that was 100% true. I was completely powerless over alcohol, and I was gonna die if I didn't quit. And so I'm glad that I found this place and all of y'all, because, well, after being in the hospitality industry in one part or another for 40 years, it's the last thing you want to do is be around people, because it's like, oh God, they're going to want something, or you have to make everything better, or you have to take care of people. And it's like, I can just be here and be me, and I don't have to take care of any of y'all. Sorry. I mean, if you need a ride and I'm going that way and I feel like it, I'll give you a ride. But, if you're a mom and you're, a mom to, another 100 drunks at your bar, and, kind of taking care of everything, it's tiring. So I'm glad to be here and not have to take care of anything but me, and be here for anybody that wants to hear what I have to say. And I'm glad to be here and listen to everybody's stories, because there's always somebody who's much worse than I was. I mean, I remember this girl talking about sitting in a closet drinking vodka out of a plastic jug, and I went, no ice, no mixer, no glass. I'm not that bad. I always made my Manhattan. Hard to make that without ice and a little work. And then there are other people that come in and I'm like, you're barely an alcoholic, you hardly count. But it's all about, number one, if your life is fucked up and unmanageable because of alcohol, you're an alcoholic. And so I'm an alcoholic, and that's just the way it is, and I can't drink anymore. And that's all I got. Thanks.